Welcome to the CCC News podcast. I'm Tom Peterson, and today we have with us Michael Calhoun, a Rails to Trails advocate out of the Banks-Vernonia area, and we're just going to talk about it here a little bit. For decades, communities across Oregon have been discovering that abandoned railroad corridors don't have to become forgotten relics of the past. They can become something entirely new, places where families walk, cyclists explore, wildlife thrives, and small towns build new economies around outdoor recreation. Something we're seeing a bit of here in the Dalles as the historic highway is coming online and getting built out. And Michael has spent years advocating for the Banks-Vernonia State Trail. That is about an hour west of Portland, and it's one of Oregon's premier rail trails. And he's going to help us tell the story of how an abandoned railroad evolved into a nationally recognized recreation destination. He had a lot to do with that. Along the way, he's become a passionate voice for trail development, rural economic revitalization, historic preservation, and the idea that outdoor recreation can strengthen communities. Today, we're talking not only about the history of the Banks-Vernonia Trail, but also what lessons it offers for another ambitious vision that has been discussed at times. The possibility of further developing the historic railbed along the Deschutes River built during the Deschutes Railroad War that could one day connect riders and hikers to 59 miles of the Deschutes River if it went to full scale. It's a project that would require vision, partnerships, and years of work. But as we'll hear today, many of Oregon's great trails started with someone simply asking, why not? Michael, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the history of the Banks-Vernonia Trail?
Sure. I'm from Vernonia, Oregon. I'm a conservationist. I currently chair the Columbia Soil and Water Conservation District, and I really enjoy being involved in my community and working on different conservation-related projects. Mm-hmm. And I could go into a little bit about the history kind of Vernonia, the area, just to get a sense of where it is, what it is, and how I got involved in this.
Yeah, and just to add to that, though, you are a lifelong resident of Vernonia, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So a lot of passion there, a lot of hometown pride.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about it.
So it's a community about a little less or a little more than 2,000 people, and it was founded by logging old growth trees that were in the area, and that really took off in the 1920s and continued up till 1957. And in that time period, we had the largest electric sawmill in the world, Oregon American Lumber, OA Mill, and at 1957 is when the old growth trees were really no more in the area. So the sawmill was only designed for old growth, so it did shut down. And I think what a lot of folks can relate to a community like Vernonia, a lot of communities that size are built on resource extraction. Yeah. And when that resource dries up or whatever the individual reason is, how does a town pivot to something different to revitalize the area? And for Vernonia, that was rails to trails.
Interesting. So in the Dalles, we had aluminum smelters for years, and that was quite a transition for us. I don't know that we're quite through it yet, but yeah, interesting. So yeah, go on. So you had this major transition after 1957 when the mill closed, and
leading up to it, it briefly was a tour route, an excursion for folks. It didn't generate enough revenue to continue it, and I guess a little bit later I could get into some of the film history. Yeah. They had some films there, but then it was officially...
Can you name a film or two?
Well, I don't know if... Ring of Fire. Okay. It's a bit obscure. Not the Johnny Cash.
Okay.
The plot of that movie is a fire destroys the town of Vernonia, and the folks escape on a train, and that train route is now the trail.
Gotcha.
So there's that. And then the last one was Emperor of the North Pole with Ernest Borgnine, Lee Marvin.
Oh, wow.
Then it shut down in 1973. And from that time to the late 1980s, it was just abandoned. And
did people use it during that period of time much, or
unofficially, because it was off limits, and
trespassing.
in the late 80s is when the conversations happened to turn into a rails to trails. And then eventually in the 90s is when it was built, but wasn't officially completed till around 2010 with that last little segment in the Banks area.
Okay.
So a big chunk of it done in quite a short time, but it shows how all these components do take decades to actually fully realize it.
Right. Right. Yeah. And kind of prior to getting started here today, you were talking about a spark, a kind of a moment in time where the idea kind of took hold, either with you or with some other folks. Or tell me about that, how that got going.
So after the Rails Trails was completed, I was on a trail on the coast, and I saw a red, white, and blue sign that said National Recreation Trail. And I didn't know what that was, so I looked it up and found out that it's a certification for existing land-based trails from the National Park Service, and it's overseen by the Department of Interior. And what folks can do is get trails that are completed, certified, and I could get into all the benefits and kind of what that looks like getting that certification.
Okay.
But that's a whole thing in itself.
Sure. And that probably comes with some benefits, maybe some grants and upkeep and that kind of thing that maintains the trail.
Exactly. So to qualify, the trail has to be complete. It can't be in segments. You can add a section later. If you add a trail or what have you years later, you can get that extra section certified. But it has to be a complete trail. And it can be on public or private land, but it has to be available for public use to access it. Yeah. And one of the biggest things, it doesn't guarantee grants, but it does elevate you against your competitors. Gotcha. So if you have either a repair or enhancement that needs to be done, having this certification next to the trail's name while you apply for that grant funds, oh wow, this trail's, it's a high caliber.
Right.
And then the other component that I like is it's what makes this trail unique. And you could either have a human history story to it or natural features. What's special about this trail? And because it's a national recreation trail, it's for everyone. It's not just Oregon or Northwest. Yeah. And little history, it was started in 1968 under the National Trail Systems Act. And 69 was when the first trail was designated. And currently in Oregon, there's over 60. Nationwide 1,300 with at least one in every state.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Yeah, like, we talked about old growth. I mean, some major trees were taken out of that section. And I'm sure the history is rife with stories and such. But can you take me back even before the national trail designation? How did a consensus build around the idea of actually converting it to a trail? Like, was it something that most people agreed with from the get-go, or was it something that took some time to build some consensus?
In a way, I'm kind of thankful it happened before social media because it really changes the dynamic. But it's similar to a lot of stories where here's an idea and a group of folks behind it trying to move that forward, and here's what could happen. But like with a lot of projects that are similar to this, you're always going to get, maybe naysayers or whatnot that, this is going to create this problem or that problem. And my dad at the time was a history teacher for high school. And so he did a poll for his class, what are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? And I always share this. One of the drawbacks is they're going to chase cows in the field. I mean, but some of the comments were crime is going to happen, property crime, violent crime for those because folks do live along the trail.
Sure. Yeah.
Though most sections of it are in the woods. And
that's I don't know about crime being a legitimate concern, but calls for service on rural fire departments or rural, ambulance services, those things can be real. I don't think they're generally, in my experience anyways, the fear is not in connection with what the actual calls for service are, but they're worth discussing, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what's really important is having these conversations, is hearing input from the people and then being able to have an answer for that. And so that in itself is a whole process. And so at the time, though, the consensus was to move forward with it. and it really revitalized the community once it was finally opened.
Yeah.
Because if you go to Vernonia, you'll see restaurants that are either have bicycle themed, art, or there's one business that is there's a certification. Really big on certification.
Sure.
One is it's bike friendly business. So there's a place to put the bike on the bike rack, or it's catered to folks that are coming in.
Sure.
And not only was the Banks-Vernonia.
So did now, looking at it, at least from your period of time in Vernonia, was the town kind of hurting economically prior to the development of this trail? And
I always say I don't want to date myself. I wasn't around,
Right.
and but it from everyone that I've heard, because this is all generational knowledge. It was not doing well. It's a very like I mentioned, when a resource dries up, and that's what the whole town is built off of.
Yeah.
And when it disappears, I mean, it really negatively affects just every corner of the community.
Yeah.
And so for my parents, the teachers that I had, there was a seismic change in the community, but for the better. And I always like to talk about, some places maybe you don't want to be discovered and whatnot, but for Vernonia, it really did revitalize the community.
Yeah. So the tour obviously developed a lot of tourism for the town. Is that like maybe the number one economic driver now for Vernonia, or is it multiple things? Or
it's a big one. There's still they pivoted. There's still a resource extraction for the trees.
Okay.
The model is completely different than what it was in those days. So tourism is a huge part, but not like the main driver.
Okay.
But there's room for all to exist.
Yeah. And I mean, I've taken a few. I haven't actually hiked that part. I've been to Stubb Stewart Park, which is kind of in the middle of the Banks-Vernonia Trail, right? And to be absolutely clear, too, Vernonia is off of Highway 26, right when you're driving to Seaside, about an hour outside of Portland area. Yeah. So, but yeah, so far as the ecotourism. Tell me a little bit about the trail. Like, I mean, you said you're a conservationist, and why is that, and why is the trail important?
I got into conservation from my parents. My dad was in ecology and teaching that in school along with history.
Yeah.
And I grew up on the Rock Creek in town, so I was exposed to the salmon, the trees, and that impacted me to where when I was able to be involved and make a difference locally with different projects, that's what got me started. And what I hope, folks, is really cool is when people go on these trails, we have the Banks-Vernonia. Our newest one is the Crown Zellerbeck, or CZ Trail for short. Also starts in Vernonia, goes to the city of Scappoose. Both trails are over 20 miles long. Banks-Vernonia is paved, CZ is gravel. And on the CZ Trail, at different trailheads, we have informational kiosks that talk about the human history, but also the natural history of the area. So something that I've always found out is, to me, Vernonia, it's home. But when you get out in the world and you visit different places, you realize how unique your ecosystem is. Or in the Dalles, the location here, you day to day. Okay, I've seen it. But when you get out, you realize how special just over the mountain. It's a different ecosystem, different way of life, and how unique and your area is, and all the stories that are here that y'all have.
Yeah.
And some stories can be told through trail access and recreation.
Absolutely. And a great example of that, I mean, well, you drove up here today. We've got the historic Highway 30 preservation project. It's a trail program that's been going on. We're almost, getting pretty close to having that complete, which is going to provide a through route from Portland all the way to the Dalles. Mitchell Point is recently opened, and what a magnificent, view you can get from there, and going through the historic tunnels and that kind of thing. But beyond that, once you get to the Dalles, just 15 miles up the road, we have the Deschutes River, and there's the old railbed trail that goes 19 miles before a trestle is burned out, and you have to do some serious hiking with your bike or what have you to get to the other side, that kind of thing. But an amazing amount of history there. The Deschutes Railroad War in 1909, as the UP and the Oregon Trunk Railroad, kind of battled up both sides of the river trying to reach Bend first, to get to the Yellow Pine and other resources, similar to, as to Vernonia in that sense. And the trail it exists. However, they took out a bunch of the trestles that were originally built for that railroad. And I noticed when I was kind of looking at the photos of the Vernonia Trail, all those trestles are still in existence, right? They were able to be preserved, and
we have the Buxton Trail is definitely the showstopper.
Yeah,
that's the one that's over 100 years old, structurally sound. And there is another trestle, but it in the 1980s there was a forest fire, and it was getting pretty close to the trestle, so the decision was made at the time to destroy part of it so it didn't catch fire and get all of it. So there is talk to rebuild it one day. It still exists, but off limits because it's just structurally unsound.
Yeah.
But it is possible, like you mentioned, if these trestles are destroyed, if there is money out there, if it could be, it's all about where it can be directed and getting those grants.
Yeah.
So anything is possible, but it takes, I always say, passion and persistence. Because if you don't care about it, or and if you're not going to go to the meeting, the next meeting, and the one out, you have to keep going to move any kind of project like that forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that trail, just a few more details about it. So that goes from the mouth of the Columbia River, and it runs out about 19 miles is where you hit that first major canyon where a trestle's gone. But I think there's several, maybe 3 to 4. I'm just a little bit shy on the detail there, but it will take you all the way to Max Canyon, which is 23 miles upriver. From there, you're on BLM roads on the old railroad bed. You could go to Maupin. I mean, you can go all the way to Locked Gate, which is River Mile 59. So, there's this big section, a trail that is possible. I don't, far as what the scope of that project would be, I don't know. But tell me a little bit about how you build that consensus, or how, the Vernonia Banks Trail developed that group of folks that saw this through. You were talking about persistence and that kind of thing. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, it always helps to network and have people behind you to be able to work on something. I mentioned social media because boy, it is kind of a double-edged sword. It gets the word out, but it sort of just creates comment section goes up. I mean, and it's designed to really, some people get agitated, and if they're not coming to these meetings, you really got to go to the actual meetings. You got to get off the laptop and go, or Zoom in, hear what has to be said, and then be a part of the conversation that way. In terms of, exposure for a trail, I always share this story about separately, for conservation, because I get asked sometimes, well, if you're a conservationist, why do you want these trails to be discovered? And a story that I was aware of is in California, there was a grove of old growth redwoods. They were kept secret specifically because they were really deep in the woods there, not accessible through a trail, and the root system of redwoods are so shallow that people start trampling on them. The canopy and the tree health is compromised. So they were kept secret. Somebody discovered them, posted the GPS coordinates online. Everybody started going there, taking selfies, and the health of the tree was beginning to be compromised. So they ended up building a boardwalk. But even building a boardwalk itself around a sensitive area like that, it's not perfect, but it was a solution. So I'm always aware of that. So when I bring a project forward, that whether it's a certification or and for your audience, if you're thinking, oh, this is going to ruin this special area, you have to know if this trail is it able to handle the foot traffic.
Right.
And I certainly, and I know a lot of folks don't want their backyard to turn into Disneyland.
Right.
And so that was a conversation I had when I brought the certification forward. Is this going to amplify it? Is it going to turn into something we don't want it to? But the consensus,
Yeah.
because it was committees or organizations that oversee the different trails, was the trail can handle it. It's meant for foot traffic.
Right.
But for your audience, if you know of a special place, just be aware if this is a place that can handle selfies, the foot traffic.
Right.
But like you were mentioning about the trails out here, that's a story to be told. That's history that people can find out about by physically interacting with the location.
Yeah, it's fascinating as you hike it. You can see where they used black powder to blow the sides of the hills out in that kind. They call them coyote holes, but you can actually see how the explosions kind of blew up and out through the basalt rock. And I mean, the basalt's just incredible in itself too. The geologic formations. It's just a really cool trail. On top of a just beautiful river, with views all the way through. Yeah. And I mean, and like the history of that construction is so fascinating. When you float down, you can see some of the spots where they had the old rock cook ovens that they used. And, some of the interesting stories too about sabotaging each other's work to prevent them, to slow them down from getting to Bend first. And there's a whole book written on it. I would love to bring in the author and do another podcast in regards to the history, that specific history. But were you guys at Vernonia able to bring in some of that railroad history and that, do you have a logging or a museum of sorts, or what kind of apparatus do you have for the historic piece?
We've kind of gone with a train theme in town.
Okay.
So when you come in, there's a big sign, "Welcome Vernonia," and there's a historic photo of a train that's been blown up. And then we do actually have a Shea locomotive in town that's covered and preserved. So there's that tactile history. And then I mentioned the CZ Trail has the informational kiosk.
Yeah.
And our Pioneer Museum and just different murals in town and just trying to integrate that into daily life in a community, that even if you're not on the trail, just going to the market, you see a train trestle mural.
Yeah.
So it's ingrained that this is the history of the town, proud of it, proud past, present, and a hopeful future.
Yeah.
But like I mentioned earlier, all these communities, that's what I really enjoy, going to different cities in Oregon and across the Northwest is discovering their local history. But if it's not promoted and it's just a secret for for certain folks, you want to discover that history. You want to learn about a town and what makes it unique and where the people are from and what makes them proud of why they live there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, can you tell me a little bit about the folks that the trail attracts? Is it obviously historic, railroad buffs, I'm sure, maybe logging, people interested in logging, but who else is coming?
We get a lot of cyclists, and it is a qualifier for the Boston Marathon.
Oh.
So people can run that, and if they make the time, then they head to Boston. So that's been cool to see.
Okay.
But no, get a lot, cyclists, just recreational. What's great about the trail, you don't have to do the whole thing. You got to have those trailheads. So you could just park your car, you could just walk a little bit, or equestrian, folks that are on the horses. And you mentioned earlier, Stubbs Stewart State Park was at the time. Oh God, 20 years ago now.
Right.
At the time, it was the newest state park in 30 years.
Yeah.
And that's really great to have it. But what I enjoy being able to be here now in the Dalles is really just for me, like it's different. It's cool seeing the dry part of Oregon and the different ecosystem here. And then when I head back to Vernonia, I see the trees and the moss, and so it's cool that everything is pretty close. That's what's great about Oregon. You're just a hop, skip, and a jump from ocean, mountains, desert.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I always think about too when I'm driving the gorge. I'm like, it's all basalt, right? But in the wet side, once you get to Mosier and beyond, it's all covered in vegetation, and you can't really see what that basalt truly looks like. But when you come over to the desert side, like when you go up to Deschutes Canyon, you're like, oh, here's all this magnificent columnar basalt, and it's all, very exposed. It's very fascinating to look at, in that respect. It's like, oh, this is how that looks, except that it's, covered in vegetation. So, yeah, just interesting. Um, yeah. So, can you tell me a little bit, like who the partners were that got the Banks Vernonia Trail going? Like, it was it Oregon State Parks, or was you tell me a little bit about
Yeah, I had our local elected officials at the time,
Okay.
city council, mayor, county commissioners, and then Oregon State Parks is who manages the trail,
Okay.
and then Columbia County manages the CZ Trail. So a lot of government involvement.
Sure.
And that was what was challenging at first, getting the CZ Trail certified. Was they have a advisory committee from the county, but they only met every 2 months. So when I'd meet them, and then 2 months later they'd have more questions, and then another 2 months, and then at some point you wonder,
Yeah.
is this going to go forward? And then I think a lot of people are dissuaded from the bureaucratic red tape, and it's all local. I mean, it's who's in the elected position. It's a lot of personalities involved.
Yeah.
But if you just passionate, persistent, and polite,
Yeah.
like that helps.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
having all those things, going to these meetings, you can move something that you care about and the community forward.
Yeah.
Without that, it can be daunting. You go into a room and you care about something, but you're talking to a board who they could care less.
Right.
You gotta convince them.
Okay.
So how that started locally was more government officials and citizen advocates. But don't, for your listeners, let that dissuade you. Every locale is different. Every county, city government. It's if you have trails that you're aware of, find out the history of them, of who's either owning them or overseeing them. Because sometimes you can have an owner, but an organization, they manage it.
Yeah.
So knowing who manages it, and then going from there, and then you can have those conversations.
Yeah. Do you have a feel for the through routes, if you will? We've gone from these small sections of trail to trying to connect them, like the old historic highway or the Banks-Vernonia Trail, and we talked about the Salmonberry Trail, which is another 80 miles or so of trail that would get people all the way to the coast. Do you feel like there's a good surge behind those ideas right now?
Yeah, and especially if the rail is just no more, because there is we talked before the show about rail enthusiasts, and it's not anti-train, anti-rail. It's what the local story is. What happened to this rail line to where it's no longer in use? Can it be in use? And for the Salmonberry Trail, in 2007 there was a storm that destroyed, especially the middle section of it is really rugged, and those trestles are gone. And then the rail line said, no, we're not going to redo this.
Yeah.
So in that case, turning it to a rail to trail makes sense. But if you have active rail lines, or maybe there's a different use for it, it's all local. It's you got to kind of get a sense of the of the land and the area and the people.
Yeah.
Before you really just, I'm going to move forward with this. No matter what, you gotta get a sense of where everything's are. But in that area, the Salmonberry, we're excited to get that going.
Okay.
And then you mentioned like just the trails out here, and it can connect and go out further.
Yeah, I mean, like there is a back road all the way from the Dalles to the Deschutes River, take you over to Moody Road and all that. And I mean, it's totally possible. It just depends on the passion and the persistence, and if that, or if that's what the community wants. I mean, of course, right? So,
off the top of my head, not that and again, the personalities is big. And in Yamhill County, there's another rail to trail they've been trying to do. It's not taken off, the Yamhillis West Sider Trail. County commissioners there are not about it.
Okay.
People are about it.
Yeah.
People want it. County commissioners aren't. They had $1 million grant. They're like, nope, not going to do it. So it's a lot of dynamics. It kind of, for Vernonia, I really feel fortunate because it happened, and able to now promote the recreation trail certification. But when you think about one that hasn't even taken off yet, and it has a real obstacle, I feel for those communities. So it's all about the people, the dynamics and the physical area.
Yeah, and the funding. I mean, like some of the things I'm talking about up in the Deschutes, they will not be cheap. Like to get people across some of those canyons, at paying wages and that kind of thing. Like they're expensive,
Hmm.
but also, maybe it's part of that larger trend of through hikes, through routes. Because it does seem to me that tourism is not going down. It does seem to be continuing to provide rural economies this nice leg of revenue that wasn't maybe there before. So.
Yeah, I mentioned social media. The engagement part of it, I always have thoughts on. But when in terms of I mean, it's those images like the Buxton Trailhead.
Yeah.
Before cell phones and all that, like that, people are discovering that, and it's a showstopper having just that angle, the trestle, and you mentioned the history of the canyons here. What's really cool is even though it could be, we're living in modern times. When you go there, you feel the history. You feel like it's either the 1800s or 1920s, and it's all still there. A lot of it.
Yeah.
And to be able to show the younger generation and the generation after, so that this history can continue. Because if there's not people that are either telling it or showing it, it gets lost.
Right.
So that's something that I also care about, as do a lot of others. It's making sure that what happened here in the Dalles or Vernonia, other people will know what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. Like just a little thing there. It's not necessarily trails related, but an interesting fact. Like as you come down Moody Rapids, it's the last rapid before you hit the Columbia River, right? And on the Deschutes, there's a big piece of metal kind of sticking out from a rock, and I was kind of curious what that was. Well, apparently they were practicing to cross rivers when the bridges were blown out in Europe during World War II. And that was there was an army post out at Rufus, and I believe that's where they practiced. So
part of World War II, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
History. Yeah, and it's just like a piece of metal. But that's what that's from. It's like, well, okay. So I mean, it's just kind of fascinating, and they're like I say, it does seem like there is this real push to get through routes, and kind of exciting. Maybe it'll happen. I don't know. I mean, it's fun to think about, and yeah. Well, anything I haven't asked you, Michael, or anything else you'd like to add in?
Well, I just for your listeners, again, it's just if you know of something that a trail special, want to get the word out, and again, the real selling point when I pursued this was it could help with repair or enhancement if you have an existing trail.
Yeah.
But that's a big thing, and getting the name out there, and if you're looking for help for anyone that if you want to pursue this, you know of a trail, there's an organization called American Trails, and they can really help guide you through the process, get the paperwork, or get it in order, and then when you're done, you submit it to them, and they forward it to the National Park Service. And what's really cool is when if and when you do get certified, you get a plaque that's signed by the Secretary of the Interior.
Oh wow!
And for a rural community to have that actual signature framed and hung up as an accomplishment for what has been done in the community, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
So that's something that anyone can look forward to. And if you get certified, you get plaques. You could put at different trailheads, because that's how I found out about it. I just saw a logo and I got curious. What's that? So when you have that recognition at a trailhead, you don't know where that spark's going to happen. Then someone else will take a deep dive if they're trail certified.
Excellent. Well, fascinating, Michael. Thank you so much for your time today and coming over here to the Dalles and chatting us through it. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you again for having me.
All right.